Ascent of Sacrifice, the second chapter, the works of love and the works of life. So what Sridhar has done in the previous chapter, chapter 5, he has applied the concept of sacrifice to the works of knowledge. Now he is going to discuss the works of love, that is Bhakti Yoga, and the works of life, which is Karma Yoga. So let us start reading. One of you can start reading. Sunki, you can start today.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, I will read.
Yeah.
The ascent of the sacrifice to the works of love,
Ah.
the works of life. It is therefore through the sacrifice of love, works, and knowledge, with the psychic being as the leader and priest of the sacrifice, that life itself be transformed into its own true spiritual figure. If the sacrifice of knowledge, rightly done, is easily the largest and purest offering we can bring to the highest, the sacrifice of love is not less demanded of us for our spiritual perfection. It is even more intense and rich in its singleness and can be made not less vast and pure. This pure wideness is brought into the intensity of the sacrifice of love when into all our activities there is poured the spirit and power of divine infinite joy, and the whole atmosphere of our life is suffused with an engrossing adoration of the one who is the all and the highest. For then, thus the sacrifice of love attains its utter perfection. When offered to the divine all, it becomes integral, catholic, and boundless, and when uplifted to the supreme, it ceases to be a weak, superficial, and transient movement men, men call love, men call love, and becomes a pure and grand and deep uniting ananda.
Yeah. Okay. Half a page paragraph, and we'll go through quickly. He is comparing the path of love and the path of knowledge. It is therefore through the sacrifice of love. So we must remember the word sacrifice is being used in the sense of the Gita, yajna. And yajna also, this is a slight different meaning given to it. It is not the traditional yajna where you sit around a fire, a holy fire, you build an altar, and then you build uh, a square where you put fuel and then you put light. It is not that. It is psychological. It is an offering that you give to the divine. Remembering and offering to the divine. What are you offering? Anything that you think, anything that you can emote, and everything that you do also. Everything is offered to the divine. It is therefore the sacrifice of love, works, and knowledge. Okay, all the three. So the wants all the three. Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. With the psychic being as a leader and the priest of the sacrifice. The word priest is interesting. The priest is always a go-between between the human being and the divine. And in this case, in the integral yoga, the priest is the psychic being. In the very, very first Anuvak and the chapter of the Rig Veda, the idea is Agni. Agni is the representative of the psychic being because it's a small flame right in the middle, deep inside your solar plexus area. And that is a small flame which is without smoke, pure. So that is a priest. It is a psychic being that puts you in touch with the divine. So he is a priest. He is also a leader. Okay. Purohitam is the word used. Yajjasya devam ritwijam. Ritwijam also is the same, a priest. Okay. So he is a purohita and a ritwijam. And they use the same words. Purohitam is that who leads, who is put in front. Purahita. Okay. So leader and priest of the sacrifice, that life itself can be transformed into its own true spiritual figure. Now, why is he using the word life itself? Because he has discussed that earlier. Life seems to be so full of perversions and falsehoods and desires and dirt and mud, cruelty and hate and rancor and anger. All these things are in this life. But even that life itself, he is using the word itself. He could have very well used it without, but when he's using the word itself, it suggests that even the worst can be made into the best. Okay? That life itself can be transformed into its own true spiritual figure. And life at our level is the vital being. And at the spiritual figure, what is it? It becomes the Chit Shakti. It becomes that, full of Chit, consciousness and also energy. If the sacrifice of love, rightly done, is easily the largest and purest offering we can bring to the highest, the sacrifice of love is not less demanded of us. Now note that of us. He is talking of the integral yoga. He is not talking of the other yogas. The other yogas can do, they can do without love if they are a Jnana yogi, and they can do without Jnana if they are a Bhakti yogi. So this is what Srindra is saying. Of us, for our spiritual perfection. It is even more intense and rich in its singleness and can be made not less vast and pure. It can equal the knowledge. Knowledge also is usually very, knowledge is the great purifier. In the Gita, it very clearly says, Jnana Dagdhena, the impurity is burnt by the fire of knowledge. Jnana Agni, Jnana Agnina Dagdha. It can be burnt by the knowledge. Knowledge is so pure that it burns the impurities. But less, we are saying love also can do that. Okay? More intense and rich in its singleness and can be made not less vast and pure. The knowledge usually is described as vast and pure. But Srindra is using the word intense and rich in its singleness. He has used three words for, so intensity, okay, not necessarily broadness, but intensity and singleness is a pointedness. That is the sharp focus. Love can give you that. Knowledge usually gives you a broad-mindedness. He has used the word Catholicity. It is broad-mindedness. You have a wide knowledge. And wideness means you become absolutely universal and calm and peaceful. Those are the attributes of Jnana Yoga. But in the Bhakti Yoga, it is intensity of passion, love, okay, and attachment to the divine. So, singleness. Intense and singleness, and also he has put rich, can be made not less vast and pure. This pure wideness is brought into the intensity of the sacrifice of love when into all our activities there is poured the spirit and power of a divine infinite joy, and the whole atmosphere of our life is suffused with an engrossing adoration of the one who is the all and the highest. So the all is the cosmic, okay, and the highest is the transcendent. So it becomes transcendent, cosmic and individual. The engrossing adoration of the one and the individual, the personal divine. Now note the word all, love extended to the all. So he is explaining also in the next sentence. For then does the sacrifice of love attain its utter perfection when offered to the divine all. In other words, to everybody and to everything. Okay, this is interesting because in the beginning your bhakti is only towards God and you are thinking only of God, and then it extends itself to even human beings. First of all, it extends to your sadhak brothers. Okay, those who are on the same path, you extend your sympathy to them because you have a common guru. And then later on, it extends even to animals and plants and everything. Everything in the physical world becomes a source of love and beauty and joy. Okay, so all, to the divine all, with an A cap. It doesn't exclude anything. It becomes integral, Catholic, Catholic, nothing to do with the religion. Wide-mindedness and wide feeling also. Feeling also can be wide and boundless. And when uplifted to the supreme, that's a transcendent, it ceases to be the weak, superficial, and transient movement men call love. Our human love is always weak. It is ego bound, superficial, it's not deep. And transient movement men call love and becomes a pure and grand and deep, uniting ananda. Is it? Uh, Yasmin was very familiar with Amal, but I'll tell a story about Amal. He wrote in a letter to Sri Aurobindo because his first wife was Lalita, okay, Lalita, and they had a divorce. It didn't work out, and he is complaining to Sri Aurobindo that I loved her so much, and she is not responding in the right way. So Sri Aurobindo comforts him and tells him that what is human love? You are saying I loved her so much and so deeply. Is really human love so deep? There's a letter for that, okay? So, Jasmine, you can check that if you want. Okay, so he says that human love is very shallow. There's nothing essentially. You may feel it is very deep, but it is not like that. Okay, that's what he's saying here. The human love, weak, superficial.
Hello,
Yes,
hello.
yes. Tell me.
Can I quote a few lines from Savitri about human love?
Please go ahead.
Love dies before the lover in our breast.
That's right.
Love dies before the lover in our breast. Our joys are perfumes in a brittle vase. Oh, then, what wreck is this upon time's seas? To have for sail the hurricane desire and for guide the unseen heart.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. And even, okay, it's very interesting, but even when Death is arguing with Savitri, he tells her, why are you so stuck on Satyavan? Human love can easily, somebody else will come and replace. It will go to that extent. Okay, he says that there will be always somebody else also to love. So don't be so hell bent on only one. Okay, that is human love. Okay, it changes so easily. So becomes a superficial and transient movement men call love, and becomes a pure and grand and deep uniting ananda. It unites you to everything and everybody, and also the divine, transcendent, cosmic, and individual. Okay, Jasmine, you can read the next one, although it's a divine love.
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Although it is a divine love for the supreme and universal divine that must be the rule of our spiritual existence, this does not exclude altogether all forms of individual love or the ties that draw soul to soul in manifested existence. A psychic change is demanded. A diversity of the mask of the ignorance. A purification of the egoistic mental, vital, and physical movements that prolong the old inferior consciousness. Each movement of love, spiritualized, must depend no longer on mental preference, vital passion, or physical craving, but on the recognition of soul by soul. Love restored to its fundamental spiritual and psychic essence with the mind, the vital, the physical, as manifesting instruments and elements of the greater oneness. In this change, the individual love also is converted by a natural heightening into a divine love for the divine inhabitant, immanent in a mind and soul and body, occupied by the one in all creature.
Yeah. Okay, so here he is exactly saying our love can be extended. Although it's a divine love for the supreme and universal divine, supreme, the transcendent, The divine only is the divine in himself without the universe, but also universal divine. He is there everywhere, and whether it be animals or trees or anything, okay, you start, and nature, you start seeing the divine everywhere, and therefore love also comes in. So supreme and universal divine, that must be the rule of our spiritual existence. This does not exclude altogether all forms of individual love or the ties that draw soul to soul in manifested existence. We can extend our love to not only other souls, but he's saying soul, not human beings necessarily. Even animals also we can extend. Okay. But individual love are the ties that draw soul to soul. He is very, very careful to use soul to soul and not human beings to human beings, because it can include animals also in manifested existence in the physical world. But altogether, he has used a very interesting word, not exclude altogether. Sometimes it doesn't mean to say that you have to start loving everybody, murderers and thieves also. You must have sympathy, but you must be very careful as to how you apply your love. The love can be essentially there, but you must realize that you have to be careful in the physical world. So exclude altogether. He has used the word altogether. So it is largely to be present, but you have to use your discretion also. A psychic change is demanded, a diverse teacher of the masks of the ignorance, going beyond the form. Masks of the ignorance, beyond the forms, there is the divine presence in everything. And the word diverse teacher is very interesting. To divest and to invest. To invest is to put into something. When you are investing money in a bank, you are putting money into the bank, expecting something to come out. But divestiture is exactly the opposite. It's a redemption. You redeem your amount. You take it out. So divestiture, what are you taking out? Where is it gone? Yeah, of the mass of the ignorance. You are taking out the coverings. Just like you eat a fruit, you take out the covering. Okay, you need to go into that is to be removed, and then the real stuff is inside. So masks of the ignorance, the outer form, a purification of the egoistic mental, vital and physical movements that prolong the old inferior consciousness. Don't be stuck only to the outer form, but go deep into each one. Each movement of love, spiritualized, must depend no longer on mental preference, vital passion, or physical craving, but on the recognition of soul by soul. The soul has to recognize the soul. Love restored to its fundamental spiritual and psychic essence, with the mind, the vital, the physical, as manifesting instruments and elements of that greater oneness. Okay. Now, this recognition of soul by soul is very interesting. That's exactly what happened when Mother met Sri Aurobindo for the first time. Okay. In fact, if you refer back to the Savitri, that description also, you can see how soul recognized soul. They must have been together in many, many lives. Okay. One life we know, Leonardo da Vinci and Mona Lisa, because that Chapaklal has made a point of that. So other places we don't know very clearly, but this was confirmed by Chapaklal. Mother one day told him that. She showed a picture of Mona Lisa to Chapaklal and asked him, do you know who is the artist? And then she revealed Sri Aurobindo. That Leonardo da Vinci was definitely one of the lives of Sri Aurobindo. Okay, so this is a soul by soul, because Mother had seen a vision of Sri Aurobindo in Paris, but she didn't know who this person was, and she was very surprised also. She found in that vision that she is bowing down to him, and he was wearing a dhoti, and the beard was, all not at all well arranged. She has used these words in French. She has used in barbe fall. Okay, she has used the word fall, wild sort of. So, and she found herself bowing down to him, and she says, "I was very surprised. Who is this person, and why am I bowing down to him?" But when she came to Pondicherry, soul recognized soul immediately. Okay, so that is the interesting thing, not the outer body. In Paris, when she was there, she didn't recognize the body. But when she came here to Pondicherry, soul recognized soul. Soul. Love restored to the fundamental spiritual and psychic essence with the mind, vital and physical, as manifesting instruments and elements of the greater oneness. In this change, the individual love also is converted by a natural heightening into a divine love, for the divine inhabitant, immanent in a mind and soul and body, occupied by the divine by the one, in all creatures. So he begins the paragraph with, first of all, the love must be for the transcendent and universal. He is ending the paragraph with the individual divine within you. Okay. So in other words, all the three: transcendent, universal, and individual in each one, not only in yourself, but in everyone. So you must love in this way, complete. Okay? So we can go now to the next para. All love indeed.
Shall I
Shilpa,
read?
yeah, Tarika, you can read.
All love, indeed, that is adoration, has a spiritual force behind it. Even when it is offered ignorantly and to a limited object, something of that splendor appears through the poverty of the right and the smallness of its issues. For love that is worship is at once an aspiration and a preparation. It can bring even within its small limits in the ignorance a glimpse of a still more or less blind and partial but surprising realization. For there are moments when it is not we but the one who loves and is loved in us. And even a human passion can be uplifted and glorified by a slight glimpse of this infinite love and lover. It is for this reason that the worship of the god, the worship of the idol, the human magnet or ideal are not to be despised. For these are steps through which the human race moves towards that blissful passion and ecstasy of the infinite, which, even in limiting it, they yet represent for our imperfect vision when we have still to use the inferior steps nature has hewn for our feet and admit the stages of our progress. Certain idolatries are indispensable for the development of our emotional being. Nor will the man who knows be hasty at any time to shatter the image unless he can replace it in the heart of the worshipper by the reality it figures. Moreover, they have this power because there is always something in them that is greater than their forms. And even when we reach the supreme worship that abides and becomes a prolongation of it or a part of its Catholic wholeness, our knowledge is still imperfect in us. Love incomplete if even when we know that which surpasses all forms and manifestations, we cannot still accept the divine in creature and object. In man, in the kind, in the animal, in the tree, in the flower, in the work of our hands, in the nature force, which is then no longer to us the blind action of a material machinery, but a face and power of the universal Shakti. For in these things too is the presence of the eternal.
Almost one page, but he is going into great detail and explaining how love can be very, very, very much widened everywhere. Okay, it's interesting. So we have a quick look at each sentence. I'll read out and this. All love indeed. That is adoration. Okay, it has to be adoration, but not lust. Okay, all love indeed. That is adoration as a sorry, has a spiritual force behind it. And even when it is offered ignorantly and to a limited object, something of that splendor appears through the poverty of the light and the smallness of its issues. The smallness of its issues You may be going to a temple and you may be even asking for something. It's a very small affair, okay? And the poverty of the rite, okay? Because the ceremony is limited only to the physical. Okay? That also is the poverty of the rite, the smallness of its issue. But love, that is worship, is at once an aspiration and a preparation. It prepares you to become wider and purer. It can bring, even within its small limits, in the ignorance, a glimpse of a still more or less blind and partial but surprising realization. You can widen your, yeah,
Can't hear anything.
no, so yeah, who is that? Uh, Archana, okay. Um, so, so that sound may not have been part of our participants. It may have been something else. So anyway, so he's saying that love in every way, okay, however small it be and however impure, there is always an element of truth in it. Okay, so that's it, of purity. It can bring, even within its small limits, in ignorance, a glimpse of a still more or less blind and partial, but surprising realization. Every movement of love, there is a truth to it, however imperfect it be. For there are moments when it is not we, but the one who loves and is loved in us. Because love is essentially a divine emotion. And even when it comes into a human being and becomes distorted, still its origin is always divine. And even a human passion can be uplifted and glorified by a slight glimpse of this infinite love and lover. It is for this reason that the worship of the god, the worship of the idol, the human magnet or ideal are not to be despised, for these are steps through which the human race moves towards the blissful passion and ecstasy of the infinite, which, even in limiting it, they yet represent for our imperfect vision when we have still to use the inferior steps nature has hewn for our feet and admit the stages of our progress. Big sentence, we will have a look carefully at what he's saying. It is for this reason that the worship of the God. Okay. So first of all, it's a worship of the God. Okay. Then it need not be the form, but you may have a mental concept. Okay. Then worship of the idol. Okay. Many people go to temples to worship the idol. Okay. The stone goddess or the metal goddess or god, whatever. The human magnet. So it can also be to a guru. Okay. And he is a magnet. He attracts the human beings. Or it can be even an ideal. Okay. You may love the ideal that you have, okay, of humanitarianism, of helping others, or fighting for your country. There is a certain amount of love even in patriotism. No? So they are not to be despised. Whereas there are many religions who despise that. Even in India, we have the Arya Samajists who say the worship of the form is an act of stupidity and ignorance. It's not true. Srila is saying very clearly not true. And he had the experience on the bank of the Narmada. He had that experience. In a dilapidated small temple, he saw the stone goddess and he could see the divine presence in that stone goddess. Okay, so it's very interesting because there are many places where only the stone is there, but not the divine presence in it. All idols don't have the divine presence. That is, it's a whole process. They call it prana pratishtha. Okay. I remember when I was in the press, I was in touch with some Marwadi people, and they were Jains. So they were building a temple in Kadlur, 20 miles, 20 kilometers from here. And when they did that, and the idols were all ready, they had to call a priest who knows how to put the prana pratishtha into the idol, and then it becomes Jagrat. Otherwise, it gets dilapidated, and there are any number of small temples all over India which are neglected, and the divine presence from there does not necessarily continue to stay. It may go away. Okay, but there are others where it is absolutely living Jagrat. So this is the. In fact, that's what they do also when you are building dams in India. Some of the lower heights, there are temples, small temples, and they get submerged. So what they do, they undo everything and take it to a higher level and rebuild the temple. Or it can even be a small place. And the idol, they remove the prana pratishtha from the idol and again put it back when it is established. So this is the divine presence is there even in idols. And so they are saying it's wrong to criticize it or to consider it as something inferior. Okay, not to be despised. For these are steps through which the human race moves towards the blissful passion and ecstasy of the infinite. Even in limiting it, they yet represent for our imperfect vision when we have still to use the inferior steps nature has hewn for us, for our feet. What are the inferior steps? Mind, life and body. They are the inferior steps. Okay, and admit the stages of our progress. So these are the stages of our progress also. Certain idolatries are indispensable for the development of our emotional being. Just note that. Indispensable is using the word. Cannot be dispensed with. Okay. Are indispensable for the development of our emotional being. I'll mention something interesting here. Sri Aurobindo's whole path towards the spiritual perfection was, it was through the Jnana Yoga first. He had the experience of the Nirvana. But even you wouldn't think that Sri Aurobindo would worship, okay? But he had a small vessel in which he had kept soil from that Dakshineshwar, where Ramakrishna was there. He had a small vessel in which he had kept that. And when the police came to arrest him in Calcutta, they saw this one, and then the police inspector, he was a Britisher, he opened that and said he saw this mud-like substance there, and he thought it is bomb material. And Sri Aurobindo says in the Uttarpada speech that he didn't know that it is much more powerful than bomb material. So that is so there is no despising even the outer form. Okay, so certain idolatries are indispensable for the development of our emotional being. Nor will the man who knows be hasty at any time to shatter the image unless he can replace it in the heart of the worshipper by the reality it figures. So once you have got to the subtle presence of the divine in everything, you need not continue to keep a outer form. But the outer form is necessary in the beginning, indispensable, so he is saying. Okay, so in fact, if you remember, Sri Aurobindo is signing his own photographs, mother is signing her own photographs and giving to people. In fact, Sri Aurobindo in one case, he even told Esha to keep, she was a young girl at that time, Dilip Kumar Roy's niece, 11-year-old she was. And he wrote to her saying, keep my photograph in front on the table and concentrate on it for some time, every day. So this is the idolatry is indispensable, Sri is saying. Nor will the man who knows be hasty at any time to shatter the image unless he can replace it in the heart of the worshipper by the reality it figures. You know, there are people who, we had a painter, a Muslim painter, you remember, he was very famous, and he had drawn images of Hindu goddesses, and there was a huge outcry, okay, and finally he had to leave the country and go away. So these are all ignorant movements. You have to, it's wrong to think that the form cannot hold the divine. Moreover, they have this power because there is always something in them that is greater than their forms. And even when we reach the supreme worship, that means the most abstract, the transcendent, that abides and becomes a prolongation of it or a part of its Catholic wholeness. Even when you are worshipping the supreme divine without form, still that also can percolate into the other forms. Okay? So, when we reach the supreme worship, that abides and becomes a prolongation of it or a part of its Catholic wholeness. Our knowledge is still imperfect in us, love incomplete. If even when we know that which surpasses all forms and manifestations, we cannot still accept the divine in creature and object. So, if you love the divine even truly, but don't give that same love to creatures and objects in man, in the kind. Kind is a species, okay? In the animal species. In the animal, in the tree, in the flower, everywhere this must come. In the work of our hands. So even that, the work of our hands also, it has to be done with love. In the nature force, which is then no longer to us the blind action of a material machinery, but a face and power of the universal Shakti. For in these things too is the presence of the eternal. So, beautiful. He is saying that love need not be limited. Even if it is limited, it is not to be decried. It is not to be despised. Because it's the beginning of the true movement. Okay? So, we have 5 minutes and we can, I think, read one more paragraph. And ultimately, yeah, go ahead.
An ultimate inexpensive adoration offered by us to the transcendent, to the highest, to the ineffable, is yet no complete worship if it is not offered to him wherever he manifests or wherever even he hides his Godhead in man, an object, and every creature. And ignorance is there, no doubt, which imprisons the heart, distorts its feelings, obstructs the significance of its offering. All partial worship, all uh, all religion which erects a mental or a physical idol is tempted to veil and protect the truth in it by certain of ignorance and block of ignorance and easily loses the truth in its image. But the pride of exclusive knowledge is also a limit, a limitization and a barrier. For there is concealed behind individual love, obscured by its ignorant human figure, a mystery which the mind cannot see, the mystery of the body of the divine, the secret of the mystic form of the infinite, which we can approach only through the access of the heart, and the passion of the pure and sustainable sense and its attention and its attraction, which is the call of the divine, flute player, the mastering compulsion of the all beautiful, can only be seized and sees us through an occult love in yearning which in them and makes one of the form and the formless, an indefinite spirit and the matter. It is that which the spirit in love is seeking here in the darkness of the ignorance, and it is that which it finds when individual human love is changed into the love of an immanence divine incarnate in the material universe.
Okay. So, we have only 3 minutes left, so we can't do this one. But it's interesting what he's saying because for him, for Swayambhu individually, it was Sri Krishna who was guiding him all the time. Okay. And so here he is using the word the divine flute player. Okay. So, in fact, his association with the Sri Krishna was right from the beginning. Okay. Because even in Baroda, when he was in uh, Calcutta, when he heard a voice telling him, go to Chandranagar. and go to Pondicherry twice. First in Calcutta, he heard the word, go to Chandranagar. And when he went there, he again heard the voice, go to Pondicherry. So, and he says, I clearly recognized the voice. He recognized the voice. Okay. So, he knew. And finally, in Pondicherry, Sri Krishna even descended into him. And in jail also, Sri Krishna was there guiding him and explaining to him the Gita, the inner meaning of the Gita, as well as the Vedas. Okay, he says that in his evening talks. So Sri Krishna for him was the guiding personal aspect of the divine throughout his life. So he uses the word divine flute players. Okay, and they're all beautiful. Sri Krishna is often referred to as the Sarva Sundara. Okay? So he is. This is the aspect. So we'll look at this next time a little more carefully. Okay. Okay. So we have to do. We'll redo this one. An ultimate inexpressible adoration offered by us. So Sunki, note down 159.
Yes. I'll take it.
An ultimate. Redo an ultimate inexpressible adoration. Okay.
Yes.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir, everybody.
Au revoir, Ranganath.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ranganath.
Okay, au revoir, everybody.
Au revoir, Ranganath. Happy Pongal.